Afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Taylor Clem. I am the Environmental and Community Horticulture Agent and Master Gardener Volunteer Coordinator with IFAS Extension in Alachua County. So today we have the lucky privilege of having one of our Master Gardener volunteers, Colin Burrows, speak with us today on vegetable gardening. So vegetable gardening for beginners. We kind of identify this as a topic that's important for a lot of homeowners and anybody that's just in general interested in gardening because there's a lot of questions that we have on what's the best way that we can manage our landscapes or our gardens or vegetable gardens and what can we plant, etc. So I do know that we have a lot of participants from all over the state of Florida, as well as some participants that are from other states. So always understand that a lot of this content is specifically tailored for Alachua County, Florida, but a lot of the information is still very relevant. So always feel free to reach out to your local county extension office with IFAS Extension, or if you're within another state, the extension office affiliated with your land grant university. So what I want to do is let everybody know that we have a couple ways that you can communicate with myself and some of our other Master Gardener volunteers that we have available. Please put all questions, since there's a lot of people signed in today, please put all questions in the Q&A part of the Zoom meeting, just so that allows us to make sure that we can regulate those questions a little bit more because we lose things in the chat box very, very quickly. But Colin will give his presentation and we'll answer some questions through that Q&A and provide some links to any publications that are relevant. But then at the end, we'll have some time available where we can go and answer some more of those questions and get some feedback from Colin. If at any time you have to sign out or you end up missing part of the program, we are recording this program and we will post it on our YouTube page, which is IFAS Extension Alachua County. And that's where you'll find other of our other webinars that we've recorded and posted in the past. So we have a lot of content that we want to cover today. So just remember, put all your questions in the Q&A box. And I'd like to turn it over to Colin Burrows.
Well, thank you, Taylor, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope my microphone works fairly well. It is maxed out, and thank you for being here. We have maybe the largest audience that we've had so far in these webinars, and it's a sign of the times, perhaps, when all of us are thinking more about staying at home and growing vegetables. But before we start with the nitty-gritty, perhaps just a little bit about me and how I got here. You can probably guess that my accent is not from this part of the world. I grew up in a village in the eastern part of England, and my father was actually a professional gardener, and he was a Royal Horticultural Society judge, and I learned quite a bit vicariously from him and helped him a bit, but I didn't see a career of weeding and mowing as something that I really wanted to do. So I went to Royal Veterinary College and graduated as a vet back in the late 60s. That was in London, and the 60s were a great time to be in London, but that's a story for another day. I came to the States and to the University of Pennsylvania and stayed there for 10 years and gardened in Delaware County for 7 of those years and learned to deal with the clay soils in that part of the world. Everywhere I went, I tried to develop an English garden, but it's been sometimes a challenge. I came to work at the new veterinary school at the University of Florida, and we've lived in this neighborhood for the last 40 years. So I've gardened in the same place for a long while, and learned from my mistakes with sandy soil. When we moved in this lot of 0.4 acres, we had 57 trees. We're down to 3 now from a variety of things, including the storm of the century and hurricanes. But what I've learned to deal with is sandy soil, poor fertility, the climate, hurricanes, and tree roots. So when I retired from university, I became a master gardener And as I said to one of my colleagues once, becoming a master gardener is basically a license to learn, because that's what it is. You are challenged every day almost, especially at our help desk, with questions that you don't know the answer to, and you look it up. And if you get involved, it helps you to remember. So we all learn from each other and continue to do well. So before we start, I'm going to ask Taylor to ask a question about the experience of this audience. I'm gearing this in the main to new gardeners in northern Florida, but some of which what I will say will be germane, and some of the information will be germane to others. Taylor, could you do that question, please?
So we don't have a poll within the Zoom meeting, but I do in the chat box, I'm sending a Qualtrics link, and that Qualtrics link is just a one question survey where we're asking about how long have you been gardening, so we can kind of gauge experience. So feel free to go ahead and click on that link and put in your results or your answer, and then submit those to us so we can kind of see what everyone's experience is, so we can make sure that we target everyone a little bit more precisely throughout the program.
And maybe later with follow-up information if there's something specific. One of the other master gardeners may be able to do that.
Absolutely.
So we'll wait for that, Taylor, or we continue?
Let's go ahead and start doing a kickoff, and we'll just give it a couple minutes, and then I'll kind of come back with some of the results.
So these data, and I added the plus, there's a lot of gardens in Florida now, and more than 1 million, and probably closer to 2 million in the last year. And spring is obviously the most popular time for gardening down here. Summer, because of the things that most of us know about, the least popular. But fall and winter here are a great time for those of you up north or in other parts. That turns around. The average garden size is between 300 to 600 square feet. It depends on how much energy you've got and the size of family that you need to feed, etc. But our problems here are, as I mentioned at the beginning, the infertile soils, a number of pests, and disorders related to weather, climate. There's thunder outside the window right now, and I expect the storms coming in. And this Swiss chard could be Swiss cheese with the holes in it, as you can see. But we learn to deal with that. We learn to deal with that without a lot of pesticides. So if you're a beginner and you're choosing your garden, your site, you need to think about the need for full sun. The angle of the sun changes over during the day, and the winter sunset is much lower. You need to choose a spot where you have most of the sun as long as convenient. It needs to be near the house. You don't want to be walking quite a way to pick some herbs and a water source. And I sort of learned that the hard way, and finally put a half-inch PVC pipe down to mine so I could water easily. Away from competing tree roots, and if you can, choose well-drained soils.
So Colin, I have results back from the survey.
Oh.
Before we jump in too far. So I have 137 results in, and I saw a lot fly in on the chat box as well. But it seems like predominantly most of the people that are in here today either have no experience gardening, or they're just beginning, or less than 2 years. But we still have people that have some experience greater than 10 years gardening as well.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah.
Well, they can probably tell me something as well, because I'm still on that learning curve as we continue. So planning the garden, you have to think about what vegetables you like and what your family likes, and what you'll do with any surplus. Do you have the right gardening tools? And that's a whole session for another day, the tools you need. And how much time can you put into it, and how much money? I mean, I've got a lot of beans here that more than my family could eat, but and that was just from one picking. But the food bank local food bank is a good place. They're always happy, especially in these times, to take material and to have our surpluses. So garden design, what do you do? I'm going to talk in the main about raised beds, and this main image is a sophisticated one. But for those of you who are in this part of the world, I absolutely recommend that you start by accessing the Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide. And that is through IFAS, EDA's IFAS, the Electronic Data Information Service from University of Florida Agricultural Institute. And it is extremely valuable, and read that as very slowly and carefully, because it will give you a lot of information. I've talked about the location, and now is the time for you to draw up a plan on paper and where you want to put things. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. This is my last year's and this year's. I have 6 raised beds, and the important thing in keeping a plan and keeping a record is so you remember what you planted where. And I can't remember what I planted from one year to the next now, but it is important because we'll get into the importance of crop rotation, which has been practiced since the ancient times, but it is indeed something that we need to be aware of, especially in this part of the world where we deal with diseases, etc. So crop group, generally, when you're choosing your vegetables, group by family, and that will be in the Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide by and large, but the pea family, the pepper and tomato family, etc., etc. And look at the planting and maturation dates. You don't want to plant too late in this part of the world in the spring, and know how long it will take for the plants to come to fruition, because some things take 60 days and some plants take 100 days. And also the height of the plant, because you need to put the tall stuff at the back, at least facing west, so that they don't shade the short stuff. And similar spacing, you can put different beans in the same row, for example. If you have the space to grow corn, you can actually use pole beans at the base and have them climb up the corn to give you a 2-4, and in the shade underneath that, you can extend the growing season by putting salad greens underneath. But keep the herbs and the long season crops together as best you can. So there is a very important aspect with regard to that I mentioned as crop rotation. Don't grow things in the same spot for 2 years in a row. I learned that the hard way. I always put peppers in the same spot. They did well for 10 years, and then, they went downhill. Excuse me. Now, this is a great resource for those of you who are in Florida. Vegetable Gardening in Florida by Jim Stevens. You can get it on Amazon. It is also available for the University of Florida Press. And if you go to the upf.com website, there's a wealth of good information and books about Florida gardening that you can actually get into. Taylor, are we doing all right? Any important questions that I need to answer, or are you taking care of those?
We are taking care of some, but we did have one question that someone, kind of segues in what you were talking about a little bit, but I think you're going to talk about it more, is nematodes.
Oh, I'm coming to that.
Yep. I figure you would be.
that's what I talked about, learning from my experience and all the rest of it. So again, there's a great source of books at the University of Florida Press. So this is what we used to think about and still do in some parts of the world as the old way, and big gardens and growing lots of produce and sort of it's almost commercial. It's not the backyard type. And also, it meant work. Watering, hand watering, weeding. It's not what we really want to do. Especially all that bending over for those of you who are a little bit more getting advanced in years. So there is an easier way. I'm going to talk about this technique that's called square foot gardening in raised beds versus the traditional. Now these raised beds, some people have done that, and I used to do it before I switched. It's called the French intensive method. And the beds are raised a bit so that they warm a bit more quickly in the spring. But it's better for Europe, and this is now, I think, the square foot gardening and that raised bed design has spread worldwide actually. So grow boxes or raised beds. Traditionally, or most usefully, they're 4 feet wide and 4 to 8 feet long, and only need to be about 6 to 12 inches high because the vegetables don't grow that deep. If you are, you do have some mobility issues, they can be made higher, at least 24 inches high for wheelchairs. And other things, and we actually do have a talk on that coming up in December on gardening with people with difficulties. The materials that are variable that you can use, I use cedar, use cypress or composite or pressure-treated lumber. There's been some controversy about pressure-treated lumber, but according to IFAS, any lumber that's post 2004 is now safe, and you don't need to worry about that. And you can use pressure-treated lumber, which will last longer in many cases. But in a raised bed, you don't use the garden soil, the sandy soil and the roots. You create your own soil. Now, this is a great book, Square Foot Gardening. It's all new. You can get that on Amazon. This guy, Malabar, championed this technology and this technique, and basically he makes 4 foot square raised beds, divides them into 1 foot areas, and plants different things in each one. And for some people, with just a couple or just making vegetables for supper, that's probably all you need, and I'll get more into that in a moment. So what he talks about is a square foot gardening is a simple, unique, and versatile system that adapts to all levels of experience, physical ability, and geographical location. So if you're listening to me in California or New York, it works there. It's just the seasonality of things is very different. And having lived in Delaware County and Pennsylvania and itching to get going in gardening in March and then having snowfall in April, I completely understand that challenge. And you grow all you want and need in only 20% of the space. And you save time, water, indeed a lot of work. Or it takes time and work to build them, and you also save money. So the location is important. This is the field in our old extension office before we started building the garden, and I'm grateful to our former extension coordinator, Wendy Wilbur, for these. These are some of her images from that. And this was where we started. The Gainesville Airport is over here, and there's a very sunny spot here with raised beds, and also something that we can let stuff grow up on. Excuse me. So the setup: build your boxes to hold soil that's 6 inches deep, and to stop stuff coming up from underneath. You can use a weed barrier like cardboard or weed cloth, and that will work for a while. Depends where the nematodes are and where they're coming from. And you need to space them at least 3 feet apart because you need to be able to work between them and around them. And I didn't do that because I was limited for space, but I'll get to that in a minute. Mulch the aisle so you don't have to weed them or mow them. Pine bark is best, it's renewable. And if you're elevated, pine bark, marine plywood is best for the bottom because it will last. You can use concrete blocks to elevate those. Some people use 4x4s to elevate them like this, and you can use 4x4s and attach the wood to those, and or just concrete blocks as well, although you've got to put a lot of soil into those to do that. So there are lots of various ways to engineer these devices. The previous page, what? I don't want to read. What did I just do? I don't think I've ever had that come up in my life before. Taylor, I think we've got a problem here.
What's wrong?
Well, I've lost. I got redirected to slideshow. I don't know what I did, but it had to be me. From current slide.
Yeah, you might have to jump back to where you were, but go ahead and just jump back into the presentation.
Oh.
Alternative methods. There we go.
To err is human, but to really foul up requires a computer.
Totally fine.
All right, so here are my raised beds. This is where I started gardening 40 years ago, and it was a piece of lawn, and I double dug it, put a lot of compost in there. I was able to get some manure from the vet school, and it was a square, a rectangle, and then I added another bit. But I was tired of the edges collapsing, so I decided to put some 4x6s down and to start some raised beds.
Hey, Colin,
yeah.
Talking about 4x6s, we did have one question, and building your beds. One person asked, what kind of wood is best for a raised bed? I know you talked about the treated lumber issue that we talk about,
Right.
but what are some other wood sources that you recommend for
the
building a bed?
composites. I've seen and read an article where somebody used the composite outside deck material to build that because it's plastic and it's non-toxic and it lasts. I would use, to do this again, I would use treated lumber, pressure treated lumber. These are cypress, built in 2014, but they're now beginning to rot at the base a bit, and I have to replace those. So I'm constrained by a fence over here, and there were 2 oak trees which are now gone there. So they're sort of long and narrow, and difficult to walk down these. I would have made this path narrower and moved it over had I been wiser. But I developed, and I'll get to this detail a bit later, but I developed a problem at the north end with root knot nematodes, and they were driving me crazy. So what I did was take all the soil out and put marine plywood down on the space and left an airspace and put weed cloth down and drilled holes in this and then filled it up again with soil, and both these boxes are that way. And so far they've done very well, and you can see that they're quite productive, and except for July and August are doing well at the moment. Four of them are covered in plastic for solarization, which is a technique we use, and I'll get to that. And then you never step on the soil when you make the raised beds. It's a Mel's mix. The formula is in his book. It's 1/3 blended compost, 1/3 peat moss, and one third, of course, vermiculite. And all these, at least, were available locally. And the way I did it, and you can all develop your own ways, is I used a wheelbarrow and I took 8 spades of peat, mill peat, 8 spades, of course, vermiculite, and then 2 spades each of black hen, that's chicken manure, black cow, mushroom and worm castings. And you can use your own compost. And we have a talk on composting detail in 2 weeks. And keep doing that until the bed is 6 inches deep. So excuse me, I have a nasty tickle. Box stores for most of the stuff. You may have to search around. Alachua feed and seed for the vermiculite. Get big bags, they're cheaper, but they are paper, and don't let them get wet. And the worm castings, and you can, some people make their own worm farms. We have master gardeners doing that, and that for worm castings, and that's a good source. But there are several sources in the area. Now, one caveat in today's world, peat, milled peat moss comes from peat bogs in Canada and in Europe, in Ireland and other places. And it's non-sustainable. And some gardeners are turning to coir, which is, or coir, C-O-I-R, which is from coconuts. It's the outside, the hairy stuff, and the coconut mats and all that. But I checked the price locally, and it was over $20 for 10 pounds of the stuff. So it's a bit of a challenge for things like that. Now, so you can use also, you can get pre-mixed soil at the big box stores, of raised bed mix, and it may be the easier way for some of you to do that. It takes about a cubic yard to fill a 4x4, their bed at 6 inches high. So that's quite a few bags. If it's not Mel's mix, you really need to use a vegetable fertilizer. That's usually a balance 10-10-10 or 8-8-8 or something. One of the, if you're growing lots of tomatoes, you can get a tomato fertilizer. But it's Mel's mix, you don't need that. And this is from our, this is one of our former extension agent, Denise Busk, took these pictures from our mustard garden, the demonstration garden. There were zucchini squash planted at the same time in the same locations. Local soil with fertilizer. The box here on the right had Mel's mix with no fertilizer. And I think that picture, in this case, speaks 1,000 words. It speaks for itself. For the benefit of Mel's mix, the root penetrates well, they retain moisture, and there's lots of nutrients there. Now, here comes what do I grow? And what do I need? And I can't tell you exactly what to do here, but except for plant spacing, you can have small, medium, and large plants, and you need that to divide that up for the number of plants and when they're mature to each square foot if you go that way. So what I actually do is with my beds, I don't quite do this. I go across or with a half row in general. And that's about, I know that's about as much as I'll need for my wife and I plant sequentially to harvest ongoing through the growing season. So that's where we are right now. Now on to plant selection. Warm season vegetables and cool season vegetables are what I'll talk about next. Now the asterisk ones are the ones that I'll spend a little time with. But obviously some of you want to grow corn. Some people love cucumbers and that's great. Eggplants. 2 plants of eggplant will do me for the summer. Okra, yes, squash, pumpkins, watermelon, cantaloupe, and sweet potatoes. They take up space and you have to need space that. And something I enjoy is Malabar spinach, and I'll talk a bit more about that. So beans, there are 3 basic types. The snap bush, which examples there, and there are in the Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide, there's a list of Florida vegetables of the types that you should use. These are some that I have used and like. And the shell beans, if you're into that, they'll take more time, but I like lima beans, but they are hard work to shell. And then the pole beans, if you're short of space, grow up, grow up, go upwards. I love a bean called Matilda because it ripens sequentially. The popular one is
Hi,
called
Colin.
Blue, yes.
We had one question come in
Yeah.
that's relevant to what you're speaking about. It has to do with the planting dates. Is that for seed planting or transplant? Can you differentiate between those two?
It depends what you decide to do, and I'll get to that in a minute with what beans you plant. You can transplant, but you plant them directly in the ground. Um, I beans, when the danger of the first frost, it's about mid-March usually, and if we get a late one, I can just cover it with frost cloth. For the fall here, I usually start my beans on Labor Day and plant sequentially every 2 weeks, and that way you get you can have green beans and later fresh peas right the way through Christmas. In fact, it's there March to April, September, October for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And beans take 50 to 60 days. And on the seed packets or in the plant catalogs, they'll always tell you what the harvest time is. And again, pole beans here, I grow some this way, but there are other ways to do that. And one I like that is growing now in my garden is the Thai purple long bean. I don't plant that till June. And I think there's a picture in the next slide coming up. So they go through the summer. And when my other beans are on the way out, I harvest them when thin. If they do mature very quickly, and you need to check those daily, almost in harvest, because before you know it, you've got a big beans. But 4 of those are enough for the 2 of us in terms of enough beans, and they're great fresh beans from the garden in Florida in August. That works. So peppers, again, there are a variety of types of peppers. We usually do these as transplants, and that comes back to the question that was asked earlier. You can grow the seeds yourself, buy the seed packets and grow them. And again, we will have a program next year in the spring on seed starting. The bell peppers, California Wonder, Red Knight, there are lots, and you can also get those at some of the local stores. And I like to buy some of my plants from the farmers market if I don't find them myself. There's all sorts of different types of sweet peppers. If you like hot peppers, there's a whole bunch of different types of varying degrees of hot. And oh wow, all the way up habaneros and Scotch bonnet. They take a little longer to mature, but they do go on to the summer and keep producing. So tomatoes are my favorite. First of all, you need to know about determinate versus indeterminate tomatoes. Determinate are limited in their height, and they generally tend to produce their fruit all at once. So if you're into canning and harvesting or sauce making, that's fine. Indeterminate are the ones that keep growing and growing and growing. And they send out suckers that are a nuisance. But you can harvest them through the season, the growing season, which is into July in this part of the world. A number of different types. I like Celebrity. I like Better Boy. Beefmaster is very good. The small sweet hundreds are wonderful. I like Mascotka. It emanated from Poland, but I just checked. It's available now, the seed, and on the web. And one I really like is something called Tumbling Coton. They come in reds and yellows, and they're small. And I grow them in hanging baskets, and we'll get more to that. Now here, there are new varieties that are coming in that are more heat resistant, because tomatoes used to, or generally don't set fruit when the nighttime temperatures get above 70. And we know how soon that starts in this part of the world. But the sweet hundreds are more heat resistant. Heat wave 2 is another one. There's an Everglades, Florida Everglades tomato, which is a lot of people grow. It's a small one and seems to grow forever. Florida Gold, and Tasty Lee, and you see Tasty Lee in the stores, and I think that was one that was developed by IFAS, Taylor, if I'm correct.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, and that's for growing in Florida. So Malabar spinach. Malabar coast is in India, on Indian coast, and it originated there. And this flourishes in hot climates. It's not a real spinach, but can be treated as such, and it needs a structured decline. And here you see it at the north end of one of my raised beds, and those, I pick the small leaves, and you can use it just like spinach or Swiss chard. It can thicken, it's a bit gelatinous when it's thicker, so it does thicken sauces, and it's good. The small leaves are great in salads, and you go and pick some Malabar spinach right now if we have that growing. So
Colin,
yes.
So we had a couple tomato questions come in that I just saw. One is, I saw one about issues with tomatoes producing fruit, and then the other one was propagation of tomatoes.
Well, I'm going to get to a little bit to propagation of tomatoes and talk about that. And I will talk, I'm coming to talk about the suckers on the indeterminate, because you've got to remove those, and otherwise you'll have a jungle, and if those towers get too heavy and they fall over, and you can't see, the tomatoes don't get air and sunlight, and they just don't do well. So that's important to know. But you can grow seeds. A lot of us grow seeds. In fact, I planted tomato seeds yesterday, and they're sitting in my greenhouse now, and they'll be ready to transplant in mid-September, about a month from now, all being well. I did take some cuttings this year as well. You can grow at the end of the season, take cuttings and root them and plant them. But mine got some sort of mold on them, and I lost them, which it's the joys of gardening in Florida, you know. So I'll get back to tomatoes and seeds in a moment. So cool season vegetables. Now, winter vegetables up north, yeah, some of them, or down here, same thing. Beets, broccoli, I love broccoli, cabbage, carrots. Carrots are great. Lettuce, mustard greens, and potatoes, peas, spinach. I also grow, I love cauliflower, Chinese cabbage, pak choi. Mini pak choi is really good, and stir fry that. Beets, we don't eat a lot. Sometimes some of these things, beets and turnips, it's easier to buy in the supermarket sometimes, unless you really are into that. Remember, lettuce, mustard greens, and arugula in a warm climate, even if it's cool, will tend to grow very quickly, and they will bolt and get bitter or hot. Arugula gets hot very quickly. So broccoli. I'll plant some seeds next week. I've got Waltham and Pac-Man, and I'll put some broccoli rabe, the rapini, in, and then, but the transplants will begin to appear in the stores down here, at least now, and in the next few weeks you can choose one or two and plant in your garden, and they should produce well, despite the shortened day length, at least through late November. So it's 75 to 90 days to harvest. So it's from planting yesterday, August, September, October. I should be picking fresh tomatoes in October and November. I should have fresh tomatoes and broccoli for Christmas and Thanksgiving. But this is a useful one, Pac-Man. So if you do buy transplants, usually they come in a 6-pack, and you put them all in the soil, and they'll all tend to do the same and ripen at once. And suddenly you've got 6 big heads of broccoli or cauliflower, and you harvest them, and the little side shoots come up, and you have more broccoli. But one little trick I've learned is to not plant them all at once in the 6-pack. Stagger them by a week to 10 days, just as long as you keep the 6-pack wet and moist, so that it's like the beginnings of a bonsai for broccoli, because it staggers the growth. Or if you're planting seeds, you can stagger the seeding. Carrots, I love them. These are harvested. These are nunts harvested a bit too late, but they do stay in the ground. Champignons is another good blend, rainbow blend plant. I'll be planting those in a couple of weeks. Now, some things work as transplants. You've got to plant carrot and other things as seeds directly in the soil, just like radishes. But it's very, very small seeds, so you take care, and then you'll need to thin them. And if you thin them by hand, you can disrupt the roots. So I just use fine scissors to snip in between them, and use about an inch between them, or half an inch, and then harvest, if I can, the very small ones as baby carrots, and they just go on. In fact, I harvested the last of my last October carrots in June. And then of course there's still some in the fridge. Lettuce, everything. We all like lettuce, but again, don't plant too much, because they will continue to go on. There's the crisp head ones, the butterhead ones. Butter crunch does well here. The loose leaf one, black seeded Simpsons are good. I just ordered some of those seeds in my garden. Red sails, that's this one. I like the outrageous. The green towers is a good one that does well in this climate. We can't seem to grow the classical romaine here, such that you see growing in the stores, grown in California and Arizona. But we get close to it with the green towers. Mustard greens, the southern giant. There's a whole bunch of different ones. I like Mizuna. There's they're called Florida broadleaf, and then there's arugula, or rocket as it's called, and then there's mesclun. What you have to do with this, if you get them, mesclun is a mix of various tender lettuces, such as chicory, arugula, endive, and we just sprinkle the seeds over the top of the soil. These need to be seeded correctly too, and then cover them with just a little dusting of seed, and make sure you can keep that moist.
Hey, Colin.
And they harvest very quickly, but as I mentioned earlier, they do get bitter and bolt very quickly.
Colin,
Right.
talking about harvest and bolting, we had a couple questions come in. One has to do with harvesting, like lettuce, for instance. Do we just remove the whole head, or how about I ask this? This is a better question. Is what greens do we harvest, the whole plant or just the lower leaves? As the second question was, how do we prevent plants from bolting? Those are big questions.
If I knew the answer to that, but refrigerate them. But no, that's because we plant too many and we can't keep up. With regard to harvesting, you pay your money and take your choice. So what I tend to do sometimes, because it's tough to plant them individually, unless you get one of those expensive seed tapes that you can find in some of the catalogs, I will harvest the largest of the whole plants that are growing, pull them out when they're tender, and let the other ones grow on. With spinach, sometimes I will take the outer leaves and just take those rather than the whole plant. It depends on your needs with salad for the day. But always take, if you're going to take the whole plant, take the larger one, so it gives the other one, just same with carrots, gives the other ones a chance to grow up, unless you really like baby carrots. So plant a few seeds of all of these sequentially, otherwise you'll have a lot of stuff that you need to put on your compost because they will bolt and go to seed. And arugula in this climate gets spicy very quickly. So baby arugula is great, but once it begins to get a little tougher in the leaf, you'll think, oh, this is, what have I got in here? Hot pepper. Onions. Everybody likes onions. They're usually bought as sets or small plants. You can get onion seed and grow it, but they're a cold weather plant. I use the sets or the bulbs mostly and buy them, but I just bought some bunching onions. I saw them at Alachua Feed and Seed, the multi-onions, and they will go in next week or the week after, as soon as I take some plastic off my raised beds. So they're good, and of course they will keep. If you do harvest them all at once, you can look up on the internet how to store onions. My father taught me how to intertwine, let the tops dry, intertwine them, and you'd have a string of onions, such as you see in the classical French shows and things. But it is easy. My wife didn't enjoy the onions hanging in the laundry room, but must add. But they did last several weeks that way. Peas. I grew up, cut my teeth up listing and cut my fingers on peas. I grew up in the age of only peas we had were shelling peas. So there are three types: the snap, shell, and snow. And as a kid, I used to have to shell the peas, but now most of us grow snap peas. I remember when they first came out available, the sugar snaps back in the 70s. They were so prolific, but you need to be careful about the big ones because they get to be 6 foot, and you've got to find pea sticks or something to keep those up because you don't want them to fall over. So look for the eventual height of the sugars of the snap peas. Some are 30 inches or so. There's container peas now. Tom Thumb is one that I've grown, that you can use that in containers. I use a little pea fence here. It's 30 inches or 36 inches, a little bit of wire, and the peas go up on that. I like this pea. It's a red one that I found the seeds, and they're very tasty, and they look good too. Now, you can plant peas in October for new peas at Christmas. Now, that beats buying imports from Mexico or Costa Rica or something if you can do that in your own garden. But peas and beans, again, that's the point of keeping a plan. You've got to rotate your plants. Don't plant them in the same place in consecutive years. I had a problem, and that my peas were turning black at the base, and I took them to the plant disease place. They said, "Yeah, it's a fungus." I thought, "Well, I know that," but so I had to start growing peas for a year. And if you do get disease in them, throw them out. Don't put on your compost. Again, something I learned the hard way. I was perpetuating that. Potatoes. We all love potatoes. Red potatoes, white, Yukon Gold, Gold Rush. Plant in January and March down here. In up north, you plant them in March, April, and they'll grow through the summer. They take a lot of space, and the important thing is to hill those as they grow. So I grow them in I used to grow them more. I put them in a trench, and then hill the potato, the soil up around them, because then it encourages the roots to produce more tubers, and that's what you need. If you don't have a space, what you can do is to build up a potato tower, which is basically what I have here at the edge of my garden, is a wire circle, which I filled with fairly well-rotted compost in layers, and take the potatoes and you cut them so there's an eye. You don't need to plant a whole potato. Get seed potatoes. Don't use Don't use potatoes you get from the supermarket because they've been treated. And I get my seed potatoes from Alachua Feed and Seed, cut them and plant them sequentially in rings. And what I do is put a 1/2-inch PVC pipe with holes drilled in it all the way down. And then I can water and get the water all the way to the bottom. And then when you get the green stuff and coming out and the green stuff turns yellow, the tops, you can harvest them. Just load that whole load into the wheelbarrow and recycle the compost. And they work very well. Spinach, Swiss chard, I will grow those as seeds in starters in the greenhouse. You can get them as plants from the local farmers markets or see them in the big boxes and the garden stores. Chard is good. It has many uses. It's like Malabar spinach. It will go into the heat too. I harvested my last chard in late June, I think, and that was planted in October. Bright lights, that's bright lights down here, all the different colors. And Eldorado is another great one. Bloomsdale longstanding and some Thai grows well and it's good for the hot weather down here. Again, you can either plant that seed directly, or if you want to get a head start, you can plant in individual. Save the 6 or 9 packs I buy stuff in, wash them out, sterilize them with a little bit of dilute Clorox solution, and use seed growing mix and keep it moist. When they get to about 3 inches tall, they get individually planted into the raised beds. In fact, I will probably have some under the light in my desk behind me in the not too distant future, because I don't like the hot weather outside at the moment. So you do need to, again, to plant sequentially. Don't plant a whole row, or well, you can plant 1 square foot of that, but that's about all. So that's winter plants by and large. Think again about plant spacing. If you're going to do the squares, large plants per square. So determinate tomatoes, you can grow about 2 to 3 feet apart because they do tend to bush. Indeterminate ones, you can, if you're going to trim off the suckers, you can keep those at 18 inches. The extra large plants, by and large, put 12 inches, but some things need more space. 4 large lettuce marigolds. Marigold, wait a minute, that's not a vegetable, but it's good against supposedly good against nematodes. So, whoops, back up. And then as the plants get smaller, you increase the number. Now, I don't know about you, but I couldn't eat 32 very small radishes at once. So again, I plant about 6 inches of radish sequentially again. This is from the Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide. It shows a rough idea, but keep a plan and rotate things. So if you plant peppers here, you need to plant, and tomatoes down here, they shouldn't be planted in the same place, but you can plant peppers here next year, or where the carrots are. So plant, space it, and keep them out. In the Mel's book, there's also some very good information with regard to that. But allow space, especially in Florida, where things tend to grow bigger. This is the 12 inches, and we've got 1 plant for 12 inches, and then they take over everything. Some, again, zucchini, 1 to 4, they can let them climb. And I mentioned large tomato plants, you need more space for those in Florida style gardening. So, vertical gardening. Keep things at the north end. You don't want that tall stuff to shade the garden. I use a frame for mine at the north end. My garden faces north-south. I grow, these are called grow bags. I get them from the greenhouse at Mecca store. They're Dave's grow bags. They hang on the fence. They take very little space. You've got to remember to water them unless you've got a watering system. There's holes in there and you can grow herbs in that. And it keeps, since you need, the herbs last longer as a rule, you need more. This is a bean called Matilda. I think there's like 10 plants on this thing. And that's just one picking. I love Matilda because she matures slowly and you pick sequentially. I pulled her down this summer's one in early July, I think it was. Hanging baskets for tomatoes. These are red tumbling tom. I grow red and yellow and have a drip irrigation system that goes up to there. It tends to flood them out a bit, so you need extra fertilizer for those. There's a Carolina wren's nest there. If I put these up early, they find that every year, just as they do the hanging Christmas cactus outside my front door. You can use conduit pipe as well, or this lattice, although this lattice is probably a bit thicker than we need for most plants. So go upwards, but keep them at the north end of your garden, please, otherwise you'll shade everything. So, one gourd, one tomato per square foot, cucumbers 2, pole beans, and as things with the other plants, the bigger things, you've got to give them more space. I don't grow a lot of squash. Tends to be a challenge with squash borers for me, but I know a lot of people like them, and some of the hardy varieties of squash are still being harvested. So with indeterminate tomatoes, snip the suckers. These are indeterminates. I think they're better boys. And I use the 6 foot, 8 foot stakes that I get from Home Depot. Use gardener's twine around and let the sun and the air get in there. And here I am snipping off those suckers. And when they get high enough that you can't reach up anymore, nip the top off. And then everything goes to the fruit. You don't have to do that. You can, with the determinates, you don't need to do that. You can let them go into the tomato tower cage or grow on a fence and intertwine them through netting. As they grow, just wind them through. And be sure, though, unlike in this picture, that you have access to the front and back, because you'll need that. So tomatoes, indeterminate, cut the suckers. Otherwise, you'll have a tomato jungle, and you don't really want that. A lot of stuff in the news right now about pollinators. We need pollinators to make sure that our gardens are as productive as they can. These are but a few zinnias, and buckwheat are great. I've just got some buckwheat going back out. I just planted some more. I grow a lot of, still do grow some sunflowers because they can be a trap crop as well for some pests, but they're also a squirrel bait. And some days I just despair with the squirrels discovering them. Agastache is lovely. Dill and parsley and garlic chives, they're also great for butterflies. I went out the other week and discovered that my parsley is now non-existent because of caterpillars, but they were good caterpillars. Salvia is good, coneflower, marigolds. Marigolds have a purported, and I'm not aware of the data. I think that, Taylor, I don't know if you know more than I do about this, but purported to inhibit, at least partially inhibit, root knot nematodes, which the bane of many Florida gardeners' existence. Taylor?
Yeah, there is, I don't know if there's not enough scientific literature that supports that it actually helps, but if it does, there are some benefits of using the specific Nemagon marigold, but still, I think the results are out on that. Definitely makes your garden look a little bit more beautiful. The tried and true method for Florida gardeners is 100% solarization.
Yep, but we still need lots of flowers nearby for the pollinators.
Yes.
Now, on help desk, I saw some questions recently about pots, and a lot of us don't have the ability. We've got patios and porches. You can grow vegetables in pots and make sure they're large enough. They're fine for sunny patios or cramped spaces. You can use a regular potting mix or Mel's mix. Be sure when you read the label that you're not getting a sugar snap pea that grows to 6 feet or more. These are Tom Thumb peas, which regularly. I have a drip irrigation system on a timer, and you can see the little tubes that they're going to these, and that's tomatoes are growing. I use these big pots, buy cheap pots, but I use half of my own compost at the bottom and potting soil on top, and they seem to do really well. Now, coming back to growing from seed or transplants, I do both, and it depends. I grow plant in January or late January, February. I start in my greenhouse with planting. I use both these little peat balls as well as planting mix in, and I find that the plastic containers that strawberries come in have a little lid. It keeps it humid until the plants grow, and you keep them moist from the bottom. And I have a heating pad underneath here I mean, they come from the plant stores. They're designed for plant germination. If you do buy, as I mentioned earlier, you buy from transplants. You don't need a 6-pack of cauliflower looking like this all at once. There's only so much you can do. Cauliflower is wonderful to do all sorts of things, roast and mash and grill, but plant those, hold them back a little bit and plant that 6-pack or that 9-pack sequentially. Stagger that planting because you don't want them all to ripen at once unless you want to donate to the food store. I mentioned sunflowers can be used as a trap crop. By trap crop, I mean it's for stink bugs and leaf-footed bugs. They will keep these little beggars away from bulk, at least, of your vegetables. But it is important to scout regularly. Look out for hand remove these things if you find them. We try not to use pesticides as organic gardeners, of course. Fertilization, you're not using Mel's mix. You need to fertilize using organic pelleted chicken manure. You can use that, it stinks a bit. Fish emulsion, question mark about that, the amount of phosphorus that it contains, 10-10-10 or 8-8-8. We could have the soil tested and get that. Now, side dress, if it's wet, some people tend to just throw that over, and if the fertilizer lands on a wet plant, it burns it. So side dress that plant. Yeah, well, soil tests. I noticed that the top of these peppers a couple of years ago now were, that's not right. You know, if it's a lack of nitrogen, it's the lower leaves that lose the nitrogen first. This is the top. So I got the soil tested in this raised bed, and there's a special raised bed test that they do. And it showed a pH of 6.5, which is a little bit high for the absorption of some minerals, and it could be a possible iron deficiency, but I did reduce the pH of that and made sure to add a lot of compost the following year more and refresh that, because you have to add new compost every year because the compost just degenerates. So get your soil tested. Even if it's a raised bed and it starts not producing, you can take that to the extension office to the appropriate place. Excuse me. Water, yeah, you'll need it. Right now, yeah, it looks like it's about to come down outside, but Water, you can water by hand with a watering can. Try not to get the leaves too wet. If you have an overhead, old-fashioned overhead sprinkler system that runs in the night, it can spread mold and fungus everywhere. You can have a micro irrigation system like this. And they're not too difficult to install. I actually did it myself, which I'm not that technically competent. I even installed with timer. With this weather right now, it's off. But so a little bit of drip irrigation, or if you really need to add something, add little sprays. Or if you're up to it, on the occasion when the plants look like they need it, water. So we're getting to the end now. Plan for pest control. You can control with an insecticidal soap like Safer soap or neem oil. They're both approved and effective. Use BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacterium that the caterpillars ingest and it kills them and it's harmless to people. Oh, and there's a complete list in the garden guide. I was just looking at this little tomato hornworm. Last September, I was sick for a week and didn't get out. And I came back, and these are my tomato cuttings from July or August, and they were absolutely stripped, and that was due to this beggar. Luckily, they came back, and we did have tomatoes right through Christmas there. But keep after them. You're looking for pests. You've got to keep an eye on your garden almost every day, because before you know it, those damn pests will be there. Trim off the dead leaves. If anything's looking like dying, just take it away. You can put it in the yard recycling, or if you don't think it's got fungus, put it in your compost. Now, oh, I appreciate Master Gardener Doug Collins' colleague for these two slides. Root knot nematodes are the bane of our existence in this part of the world. They live in the soil in areas with hot climates. They bore into plant roots, cause these granulomatous, these galls, that's the venom, we call it a granuloma, the lumps, and they starve the plant. They affect many crops. This is what drove me to distraction. This is a Malabar spinach. Before I changed that bed and elevated it, that's a root knot. No wonder the thing is dying. You can get nematode resistant varieties, add lots of organic matter to your soil. In summer, and now this is important in this part of the world, solarize. And basically all that is to cover with a sheet of clear plastic at the end of the growing season here in June, July, and leave it down for 6 to 8 weeks if you can. One little trick for that, you just weight the sides down with the plastic, and that heats the soil up to about 160, 165 and kills weed and weed seeds and nematodes, or at least it diminishes them. Mound the soil a little bit, because if you leave it flat, water will congregate in the middle, and it will not be able to get as hot. I just made that mistake with the last one I did. So don't do what I do what I tell you. Organic matter, solarize, plant cover crops, marigold we mentioned, sun hemp, that's not a typo, that's how it's spelled. Hairy indigo, they will help keep the nematodes down, and also you can chop those down and they'll add nutrients to the soil. There's an IFAS publication. Again, I will say that I can't emphasize enough the importance of IFAS, or University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Science publications. And this system called EDIS, Electronic Data Information System. And I have it bookmarked on my computer. And you open that up and type your question in, and darn if you, most of the 99.9% of the time you'll get an answer of something that's germane. I was once on the help desk at the Master Gardener help desk, and I better stop waffling. And I got a question about crayfish. There were crayfish in Florida. Somebody sent me a picture, and I used EDIS and discovered there were like 70 different species of crayfish, and we were actually using that, able to identify the species, now other pests. Oh, yeah. So squirrels, I don't know, tree rats, gray rats. So they sequentially, they hit my cannas, they hit hibiscus. These are broccoli. I actually built a cage to keep them out, and they found a way in, as is their woe. Rabbits. I just had rabbits in my garden for the first time. There was not much in the vegetables. I caught them mowing the lawn a bit, but I don't have any penders left or cosmere now. And you all, depending where you live, unless you're lucky and well fenced or whatever, are going to have to deal with this issue. Luckily, I don't where I live. At least they wander down the street sometimes and they use the creeks as pathways, but they don't come out back. So pests, we all have problems. Protect your garden, wire fencing, bird netting. You can extend the growing season with this. Bird netting will keep some that keep squirrels off, and kept them off my sunflowers. But when it's going to be cold at night, that's fine. But don't forget to remove it or lift it, because otherwise you'll burn everything. Harvest when it looks how you'd like to purchase it. Add new peat and compost at the once you're ready to go again. Replant with a new and different crop, and as I remember, keep a record. Multi, so we planted too much, we didn't use it. This is bitter, it goes into the compost. These are fine. This is a demonstration garden, I think, but one family not necessarily going to use form of all these cabbage at the same time, but plant sequentially. Composting, we have a whole program, September 1 on that. Reduce the cost. I have one of these. This was the one at the extension office, a block one. I won't get into it. I use these as well, and rotate them. And my kitchen counter, I keep this and everything. Non-animal meat, fat goes into there and goes onto the compost heap, and matures, heats up and kills the worms. So the cost. This is a rough. It depends where you buy and what you choose and how much you're going to build. The hardware and lumber about $40 or more. The latest price I got on peat, 3 cubic feet, the big bale, Lowe's is $12.48. Mushroom compost at Lowe's, $5.28 last week. Black cow is $8.50. Chicken compost, it's Alachua feed and seed. That's expensive, but you don't need a lot of it. And worm castings, again, expensive. And then coarse vermiculite. So it's about $140, $150 plus your time and labor. I store my stuff in these bins from ACE. I left the chicken compost in the plastic bag outside the shed one day, and came out, and some critter had a feast. So now it's in there, and keep the lid on because it stops the smells. So that's about it. Resources, most lumber yards or box stores for the lumber. You can get the soil mixture at the retail garden centers or locally Alachua feed and seed. You can get premixed soil at local nurseries, and you can call around and see what they've got. Irrigation systems, the Lowe's, Home Depot, or some ACE has some as well. One of the companies has, the irrigation companies has some very good tutorials online, and there's some also good stuff on YouTube on how to do that. Most garden centers, I tend to support as much as I can farmers markets when I need transplants. From some of that, you know where they come from. Some of the big stores tend to offer things that don't grow locally. There are lots of seed companies, or there are many more if you Google a specific type. I use Park Seed a lot. But heirloom seed, Baker Creek out in Missouri and California is wonderful. Heirlooms from Atlee Burpee, Johnny Seeds, there are many. The Square Foot Gardening book, IFAS bookstore. I don't think these are now available locally. They used to give them away, but I think they've stopped for the time being. I mentioned IFAS the Edis for literature. And the greenhouse mega stores, I've just browsed that. There's so much stuff there. It's amazing what you can find. So there we are. Happy growing, everybody. If you have any questions, you can always contact us at the Extension office by email or call, and we will email you back. Right now we are between homes. You can, my email address is up there, burrowsc@UFL. We have a Facebook page.